Hello and welcome back. This is Don't Watch at Night, a spooky little podcast dedicated to Spanish language horror and Latin American horror. I'm Valerie, and Veronica and I are still out on vacation right now. We're returning to you in July, as we said. But today, we're giving an entire episode to a look back at the books that we read between the start of last summer and the start of this one. Veronica and I use each book selection as the opportunity we want it to be to lift up Latine writers. We also do a cocktail pairing for each book club episode, and we've never really done a look back with any of those. So guess what we're doing today? We're taking a look back at some of those delicious beverages as well. And I gotta say, I'm glad that we are, because I straight up forgot about some of these, and they were all really good, and they're perfect for right now. They're perfect for summer. So just a quick word about Don't Watch at Night and books. Veronica and I have different reading tastes for the most part. Wrapping up the first 2 years of this podcast, we're entering year 3. It quickly became apparent to me and her as well that we're usually bringing two very different takes when it comes to the book club discussion episode. But we were in agreement on a lot of what we read this past year. And please know that just because one of us may or may not ultimately settle on liking any particular read that ever gets chosen for book club, that does not mean that we don't think it's worth your time. As a matter of fact, we select books because we really do want to lift up that particular story for someone, because someone or many someones will enjoy it, even if one or both of us may not. Okay, so just be comforted with that little disclaimer there. We recommend these books because we want you to read them, and whether or not you come away liking them, well, hey, that's your prerogative. So having said that, all of the books we're revisiting today are excellent. I love them all, and these clips will contain spoilers. Our book club discussions are full, don't hold back episodes. We talk everything. We talk endings. So if you haven't read what we're going to be talking about today, then please know there are spoilers all up in here, and listen or don't accordingly. So let's get into it. Our first book here is Monstrillo, and we were joined by our wonderful friend, Perla Caballero. She runs the West Seattle chapter of the Morbidly Curious Book Club. We're gonna link that for you in show notes. And she's our occasional guest host here on the podcast, so we love her dearly. We paired this book with a New York Sour. So listen to me and Perla talk a little bit about that here, and then we'll dive into Monstrillo. This is always the section where I kind of lose Veronica, because Veronica does not care. What are you drinking, by the way, Veronica? What are you drinking?
Diet Dr. Pepper.
Like I said, it doesn't look nearly as pretty as it did when I first poured it. But what we are drinking is the New York Sour. So the reason I decided to opt for this is because I think in the book, tequila is mentioned several times.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also in a lot of the books we read. If it's not tequila, then it's mezcal. And I'm not being a traitor to my people, but I drink other things besides tequila and mezcal.
I love whiskey. I love whiskey, so I'm glad you picked.
So I was just like, all right, let's see what else we can do. And obviously, there is a portion of the book that does take place in New York City. So I was just like, let's go with that. My husband and I recently got turned on to New York sours. So it was just like, that makes sense to me. So the recipe that we are using comes from liquor.com or liqueur.com. All of this information, guys, as usual, it's going to be posted in our show notes. It's going to be up on our episode blog as well. But the New York Sour, per liquor.com, calls for 2 ounces of a rye whiskey. I utilized the Total Wine liquor store that Texas has. I don't know if are they.
We have them here.
nationwide?
Yeah.
Okay,
and there's
okay,
one
okay.
that's going to be built like a mile from my house. I'm so excited because they do delivery.
They do delivery. They also have tasting classes. They're
Mhm.
super fun. We've done tasting classes with them before. But I tried something called Balcones Texas Rye Whiskey. I did not care for it. So when I tested this out last night, that's what I used. It's all right. It wasn't the best. So what I'm using today is just our go-to Four Roses bourbon. We should be sponsored. Four Roses. Somebody give us a sponsorship.
I can write a really good letter. Let me help you.
Okay. So 2 ounces of that, 1 ounce fresh lemon juice, 3/4 ounce simple syrup, 1 egg white. That's optional. And I'm going to talk to you people about that in a minute. And then you're going to float on top. You float a little bit of red wine on the back of a spoon. And the reason you want to pour it over the back of the spoon is because you want it to sit on top. You don't want it to bleed into the drink if possible. Let me tell you what I learned when I was doing my research for this drink. I learned that if you want to get your egg white to really foam up, what you're supposed to do apparently is you're supposed to throw your ingredients in a cocktail shaker, do a dry shake for like 30 seconds, and then add your ice and do a second shake. So we did this last night. We tried this out. We did a full egg white in the drink, and we shook for 30 seconds, and then we did ice, and then we did it again, and then we poured it, and it was just total foam. Like it was a thick, foamy, like a smoothie over ice. And because I'm committed, I was just like, well, let's see it through. So we poured the red wine over it. The red wine did not sit at the top. It kind of bled through. So it just looked like a brain hemorrhage in a glass. And we tried it. It tasted wretched. So I had to pour it out. So today I did not do the egg white. I don't know what I did wrong. I'm gonna chalk that up to like user error on my part. I will say I think one whole egg white for one drink is a bit much. You could do half of that. Like
So
you said, you've had it before.
I've had it before because when I was in New Orleans, and if you love drinking and eating, this is your town. It is very French, especially the French Quarter.
Yes.
And I love the art museum out there. It has some of the most unique art in the United States. So we went to this one place that is known to be haunted, and like I said, sometimes the room felt a little full, and I'm just like turning around. And it is really good. The egg, I couldn't smell it. So I did do you're not supposed to drink it with a straw because they serve it up in a cupulette. But I enjoyed it. It was a great cocktail. I just made myself a basic little sour whiskey. I used Bullet Bourbon 10 year.
Nice.
I actually opened it for this event. Yeah. I made one for my boyfriend and his dad, and then I made my final one. So it's a great cocktail. It's also really refreshing with the lemon.
Yes.
It's a good summer cocktail.
Good for summer.
I was just kind of like looking at the egg, and I was just like, yeah, every time I've done anything that involves me not cracking it and frying an egg, it's a disaster. So I know my boundaries, but I can make a really good gin and tonic with a splash of Saint Germain. That's my favorite drink.
Oh, yes. Yeah, Saint Germain. And then for like the mocktail version of this, we did include a recipe from bbcgoodfood.com. It's go for it if you're game. It calls for a tea infusion. You know, you could go that route, or I feel like a lot of these recipes predate the existence of a lot of really good non-alcoholic spirits that are now becoming more and more prevalent. So you could do a mocktail version of this with non-alcoholic bourbon, with a non-alcoholic wine, and get something that, in my opinion, might taste a little bit closer to an actual whiskey sour.
I'm really actually glad that you guys do a non-alcoholic version because let's be really frank. This nation, the ones that stayed home were like, well, I was like, I can't go anywhere. I'm drunk or I'm stoned. I live in a legal state, so that's why I can say that. And then when we were kind of coming out of it, and I was like, yeah, so I have a lot of empty bottles in my trash.
Time to take stock.
Yeah, so I would like go, I got into making mocktails because of that reason. Like lavenders, bitters with some club soda became my go-to. There are people who just don't drink. They don't want to drink, and you know, I've been around sober people, and you're just like, all right, great, let's make these. And you're working just as hard. You're just doing it differently.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's like one of the things. Like, I want the mocktail to not just be juice in a cup. Like, you know, there's lots of elevated things out there that you can do that taste really adult and grown up. And
anything out of a champagne glass looks great. Apple juice, water.
Right. So the book that we read, the book that we're going to be discussing today is Monstrillo by Gerardo Samano Cordova. I'm going to read this little bit. Where is it? Hold on, friends. This is from the LA Times review that I have.
That's a great review, by the way. I read it when it came out.
Written by Gabino Iglesias.
Yes. Whose book just came out last week. So go and support him.
What is it? House of Bone and Rain, right?
I saw it at Barnes & Noble. I was just there Wednesday. I almost bought it.
while you're looking that up, let me read this. Okay, so from his LA Times review, Monstrillo, a debut novel by Gerardo Samano Cordova, is aptly titled an unearthly hybrid that's part horror, part literary meditation on grief, part wildly entertaining tale of an impossible being forced to live in the shadow of the dead boy he replaced. At once heartbreaking and unapologetically strange, this is a cross-cultural, syncretic, folksy, razor-sharp narrative about the horrors of grief and the eternal debate over nature versus nurture.
It is a meditation on grief as someone, and this is a tragedy in our world, is there are people who walk around with no children who call themselves mothers but aren't mothers. And I thought the mother Magos did a great job of really, and also in each section, we said this before we started recording, is each section the type of prose change, the grammar changes, the style of writing and the voice of the narrative changes.
She was the center of her own universe, and she kind of took advantage of the people around her, and so that always really rubbed me the wrong. I mean, I gave her a pass in the beginning, obviously, because she lost a child, but even as the years went by and M evolves and becomes M, I just felt like she was always kind of really taking for granted the people around her and kind of expecting them to fall in line with her wishes and desires. And so,
that's the way.
I just wanted everybody to set limits and say, if you can't abide by these limits, then you're out of my life.
That's the way she's written. So you're coming away with I think a logical reaction to her. I think she's, of all of them, she's definitely the most, whether consciously or unconsciously, she's definitely the most self-centered in her world.
She's very self-absorbed because you kind of get hints from it from her point of view, but you really get it from Lena, because Lena is her friend, and then when she kind of used the attraction that Lena had towards Magos, and she played on it, and it got to the point where Lena just had to leave, which also made me feel like M was very gender neutral. The way that M dressed, with a very, or when they're sizing M for the suit for his dad's wedding to his partner, he starts to shrink because he's morphing back into the, the bat, vampire, a chupacabra. I thought it was I seriously thought it was going to be a chupacabra.
What were you picturing, in the early parts of the book where he's still not fully, what were you picturing in terms of what he looked like?
A little bat with no wings and an arm tail, just a little arm tail, because they said he used it to swing. So I almost pictured a little changuito, the little spider monkeys, the little babies.
I was picturing a monkey kind of thing,
or a sugar glider. That's what I would a black sugar glider. And I love how they described how he was hairy, and then he lost his fur. They abuse Lena for her. Oh my God.
For her medical knowledge. Yeah.
And then when they're like, well, we want to take off the arm tail because we feel like that is keeping him primal. We see through the MRI, they see oh, wait, there's a body here, but there's no organs. There's no blood. It is this ooze that they describe.
I didn't know what to picture. I think I was kind of picturing a fuzzy tadpole-ish looking thing. I didn't really ever have
tadpole.
a good...
And he also talks about unhinging his jaw to show his fangs to feed and stuff. It was a really, really well, Walter Mosley is one of my favorite mystery authors, and he never describes a room to you. He just describes the furniture that the characters are going to touch, because he wants your mind to well, I know what a room looks like in the 1940s. I know what, a black woman of her time that's waiting for the bus. He'll describe the clothing, but you'll never describe the woman, because he wants you to kind of just build your own world. Right. I felt because you get also when they describe Monstrillo, you notice everyone describes him differently. Joseph is when you find out, oh, we've essentially time jumped that he's a fully formed man.
Yeah.
And M tells us what it was like for him to get a walk with his legs and how his mother would laugh at him.
Yeah, I enjoyed the story. I didn't cry. I went into the story thinking that it was going to be emotionally wrecking for me. So that didn't happen. So kind of disappointed, but not really, because I didn't really want to be in a depressed funk either. But
yeah.
I hate when you walk into a book and you're like, nobody told me about this shit, and you're crying for 2 days straight, and you're trying to tell people it's a good book. Trust me, no, why are we watching another episode of Buzz? We're like, it's a fucking book,
All right. So the next book we read this past year was Witches by Brenda Lozano. And this book was really interesting, really beautiful passages. Veronica and I, there was a lot of reading of passages in this episode from the both of us. Usually I don't tab up my books with so many of those sticky tabs. Veronica does that all the time, but I generally don't. But this is kind of the book where I started doing that. And now I kind of habitually do that. So I credit Witches by Brenda Lozano with that. We paired this one with, and this is a cocktail that I completely forgot about until revisiting this episode. We paired it with a sage and ginger paloma, which it was a great pairing for when we talked about this book. This was the October book, so fall, not summer. Even though I as I mentioned in the episode, paloma to me is a summer cocktail all the way. So enjoy a paloma this summer for sure. And if you're feeling it, try the sage and ginger one because it was really tasty. So you'll hear that in a minute, and then we'll dive into the book.
Here comes my segment. It's my cocktail segment.
Oh joy!
This is Veronica's she checks out on me every time.
I'm just drinking a monster drink.
That's good. Okay, so I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the cocktail pairing that we chose for this, which was beyond obvious given the characters in this story. We're going with a paloma this cocktail round because there is a paloma in this book. There's a paloma character. Veronica, I've talked to you before on this podcast, and all listeners, I've talked to you guys before about a highball. Do you remember, Ron, what a highball is?
No, I do not, Alex.
Okay.
Like I'm on a game show.
For those new to this podcast, Veronica is not an imbiber. She does not generally imbibe. It is a rarity. It is like the moments when she will. That's like a unicorn moment. So, but I have said before, and I was reminded researching the stuff on paloma, the history of it.
I'm going to try really hard not to break into song during this podcast. Do you know what song I'm talking about?
No, but
Una paloma blanca. So every time you say paloma, that's running in my head.
Okay. No, because a paloma is a highball. It's part of the highball family. And a highball, I have said before, I think so Veronica's not a drinker. She just didn't enjoy the taste of alcohol, which is totally
fine. It's not
fine.
a moral thing at all. I just don't like
She doesn't like the taste of it. But like a highball, if I was to try to get Ron to drink anything, and for those of you out there who may know Veronica or meet Veronica and want to get her to drink anything, I would lure her in with a highball because a highball is a low ABV cocktail. It's going to be lower in alcohol content. You're starting with your base spirit, and then the proportion of your mixer is higher than it would be for a cocktail. So let's play percentages. If a cocktail is 50-50, then a highball would be 30-70 or something like that.
What is the name of a highball that I might know or have heard of?
I don't know because I don't drink a lot of them.
Alcoholics
I've heard
Anonymous. Here we go.
Okay, stop. I've heard that a scotch and soda is a highball.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good at all.
I mean, yeah, I don't like. I'm not a big scotch drinker.
Here are mixed drinks that I have that I do like. If I were to be in a bar, this is what I would order. I don't know what they were classified as. Like an Amaretto sour.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Collins.
A Tom Collins, I think, is a highball. It's considered a highball.
And that's it. That's the two. Oh, I like frozen Bellinis.
Do you know what the highball of the moment is?
No.
That you might appreciate? An Arnold Palmer.
I'm not kidding.
In relation to Donald Trump's latest whatever, or he was talking about the size of his Arnold Palmer's junk. Anyway.
Oh,
by the way, everybody get out and vote.
Yes.
Early voting is happening.
Says the one who hasn't voted of the two of us yet.
I haven't voted yet. I've been sick, as you can tell. I've been sick. My immune system died this week. So anyway.
But yes, if you live in the U.S., please go vote.
Please go vote. Yes. So history of the Paloma. Let's go. The origins of the Paloma cocktail are not 100% clear. There are those who believe that a man by the name of Don Javier Delgado Corona, owner of La Capilla, the oldest bar in Jalisco, Mexico, they believe that he was the inventor of the Paloma, although he later came to deny that. So he said he had no involvement with it. Some say that it was the invention of Squirt, the grapefruit soda, being introduced to Mexico in the 1950s. That was where the Paloma came to be. They said that they kind of just mixed it with tequila and it became the go-to drink from there. Still others say that it's older than that. As we know, La Paloma in Spanish means the dove, and some think the classic drink may have been named for a popular Mexican folk song composed in the 1860s, which is,
the La Paloma Blanca.
I don't think I don't know. I'm not familiar with that 1800 song. Regardless. Okay, so a traditional paloma is considered, as I said, part of the highball family. Would involve 2 ounces of tequila, a half-ounce lime juice, grapefruit soda, 4 ounces, I should say, of grapefruit soda, pinch of salt. You could skip the salt if you don't want it, and then you garnish with a lime wheel. If you're in Mexico, the go-to soda that you might use here would be Jarritos, but Squirt, the aforementioned Squirt, is also very well liked. And the key to any paloma is going to be a tequila that is a blanco. If you'll permit me, Veronica, I'm going to talk to you about the 5 types of tequila. So you have your blanco, which is your silver or your white. You have your joven, your gold. You have a reposado, which is an aged tequila. And then you have añejo and extra añejo, which is ultra aged. So, and I've never had extra añejo tequila or even an añejo. I've had reposados before. A blanco, for those who don't know, is going to be more agave forward. So it'll have flavors that are agave, citrus, pepper, grass, while a reposado will have more oak-aged expressions that are toastier, think warmer. Notes of vanilla, caramel, dried fruits, yada, yada. All of that to say that a blanco is going to be the obvious pick for a paloma because a paloma has citrus. You're bringing in that grapefruit. So a blanco will complement that nicely. There are variations on palomas. You can, if you're doing something that's spicier and warmer, you can incorporate a reposado, but I didn't do that this go around. So go with if you're doing this cocktail, go with a blanco. This was an obvious choice given that paloma is what brings us to this story written by Brenda Lozano. However, we're not in the midst of summer anymore, and a paloma, at least in these parts of Texas that Ron and I are from, it's really considered kind of a summer drink. So we found something that is more seasonally appropriate, I think. We're drinking a sage and ginger paloma, and this comes from a resource called the Foul Mouth Gourmet. We've linked it in our episode blog. And it also includes a great recipe for the cinnamon sage honey syrup that's featured in this drink. This is one of those recipes that's calling for grapefruit juice as opposed to a grapefruit soda. And I will say this, if you're doing a paloma where there's no other competing sweetener, where it's just tequila, then do the grapefruit soda. You need the Jarritos or you need the Squirt because you need that extra sugar. In this recipe, because she's pulling another sweetener, because we're using a honey syrup, don't do a grapefruit soda. I think it would make it entirely too sweet. So stick with a grapefruit juice and do what the recipe is calling for. So this is the recipe. 1/2 ounce of lime juice, 2 to 3 tablespoons of the sage honey mixture. I only did 2 tablespoons, FYI. It was plenty sweet enough for me. 2 ounces of grapefruit juice, 2 ounces of tequila, and then you're going to top it off with ginger beer. You're only doing 2 ounces of grapefruit juice. You're not doing the full 4 ounces that a traditional paloma would call for. So consider that those final 2 ounces are going to come from the ginger beer that you pour on top. And I would say for those of you looking to do this as a mocktail, skip the tequila entirely. This drink stands on its own without tequila. So if you want to try it, keep all of these ingredients the same. Skip the tequila. Ginger beer, most commercial ginger beers are non-alcoholic. At most they might have like 0.5% of alcohol. But if you're looking to just no alcohol whatsoever, then go with ginger ale. Ginger ale is going to be just fine in this scenario. Award-winning author Brenda Lozano. This is what we read was a translated work. Unconventional plot, a non-linear plot, which is what I said to Ronnie. And honestly, I may, in a minute, Ron, step away to go grab my book because there were a lot of beautiful passages that I tabbed.
Because we got 2 point of view characters, right?
Yes.
And each one has a very different voice. And the voice of Feliciana, hers is very much, it was described in that review as being looping and unending. It was kind of what I would almost equate to being almost a stream of consciousness type of storytelling where it's just run-on sentences, very little punctuation, and right there, because I am somebody who even in a text message have to use correct grammar. So
this breaks Veronica's brain in
so
many ways.
This was going to be a problem for me. I do not enjoy stream of consciousness type storytelling, and that's just a personal preference. Has nothing to do with the writing. So I halfway through the book, I said, you know what, I can't read this. I have to. So I switched to the audiobook about halfway through, and the audiobook narrator did a good job. She made it sound more natural than the way it was sounding in my head.
Well, yeah, and that's what it kind of like. It was difficult also for me to read because it did kind of felt like the transcription of an interview, which is, I guess, like what it is. It's like if we're taking the story, the journalist Zoe goes to interview this woman, this curandera, and so it's like a transcription of what she said in these interviews. And so, yeah, it's hard to read, but I'm imagining it was easier to listen to.
Yeah, it was easier to listen to. So that helped make a difference.
These characters are extremely fleshed out. By the end of this book, you know exactly who these people are because you spend the entire story reading about them. One of the things that we have linked for you guys is the fact that this book has been optioned for a series. And so I feel like I kind of do want to see what the world is that they inhabit. And I do want to see more of what might come from this story because I feel like somebody described it as sort of like a novella. And I feel like that's what it is. I feel like we just get like this little snippet of their lives, and I want to know so much more.
See, I'm good. When I read that it was optioned for a series, I was like, but why?
We haven't even dived into the murder yet, Veronica. Like all we've done is build up these characters, and it's just like, okay, and now go solve the murder of Paloma. Like you're not interested in knowing that?
There were some nice passages. Okay, this is Paloma talking to Feliciana. Grandpa Cosme used to call me pájaro, but not because I walked like I had feathers. He called me that because I have wings where other people have regrets and fears, and they can't stand up from the weight of everything their families expect from them. And to all those gentlemen I say, why carry around so many regrets and fears if Christ already carried them for you, my beauties? Look at him there on the cross suffering for you. Go out and enjoy life because it is beautiful, and I say it with my lips painted red because otherwise my smile would be naked.
All right, moving right along. In this next segment, we discussed Extended Stay by Juan Martinez. This was a beautiful book. We were joined again by our friend Perla Caballero. She came on to talk with us about this book. One of our longer episodes because there was just so much to say here, and really, really beautiful book. If you haven't read it yet, do. And if you haven't listened to that episode, please go. That was our 40th episode. So it was a little milestone that we crossed. We paired this one with a cocktail that I kind of got to create, or I should say the mocktail I kind of got to create. The cocktail is a riff off of The Weekend at Waldorf. I called it The Weekend at the Alicia. And then the mocktail was The First Esther. We don't have that clip for you today, but if you go back and you listen to that episode, The First Esther is totally a nod to the story itself. So listen to us talk a little bit about that cocktail, and then we'll dive into that book as well. This cocktail is definitely part of the daiquiri family. And as you can probably guess, we tweaked the name of it to fit this book club. So normally what this is called A Weekend at the Waldorf. And it's supposedly named after the 1945 film of the same name. It's like a comedy musical, I think, called Weekend at Waldorf. The reason why we went with this is because there is a very lovely bar and grill called Herbs and Rye in Las Vegas. And they have this on their bar menu. And and if you go to their Instagram, they have it all over their Instagram, the Weekend at Waldorf cocktail. So it's basically like a featured cocktail of theirs. I also personally, I associate daiquiris, for whatever reason, I associate them with like 1950s, 60s America. I don't know if that's written somewhere, but I feel like it was a popular drink of the 60s because I know it's the 60s where like the Mai Tai had a heyday, and the Mai Tai is another daiquiri. So
yeah, it's also when the rum trade really picked up as well. And also it's around the time when the Cubans were starting to emigrate Cubans and people of like, the islands and so forth. So we
That's
had
right.
the Dominicans and the Haitians, and so that they drink rum. They love el rum. I
Yes.
end up making a fool out of myself when I drink el rum. So that's another reason why, because it's also, if you look at the music, like what was going on, the bossa nova was getting big, the lounges were getting big, and it wasn't even just the United States, it was also Mexico was getting that infiltration. So you are on the right path of thinking like 60s is a big rum era. It's like the 20s was like bathtub gin, the 40s was whatever we could drink because we're at war. So
Right.
it was a more time of people, they were drinking rum, and daiquiris were, they were extremely popular.
I just want to run through the recipe real quick for those of you who are not following us on social media, but you really should, because we post this stuff ahead of time so that you can be drinking your cocktails as you're listening to book club. So the weekend at the, it's either Alicia or Alicia, and we talked about this before. So depending on how you want to pronounce it, it's 2 whole strawberries that you're going to muddle in a cocktail shaker, 2 ounces of white rum, 3/4 ounces of like a orange liqueur or an orange
Curacao.
Curacao.
And
the person at the liquor store corrected me. I'm like, all right, you feel special.
and 3/4 ounce fresh lemon juice. I didn't get a chance to try this drink beforehand. I went in blind. It's really tasty. How do you like it, Bella?
I'm going to taste it right now. Hold on.
Okay.
Oh.
I was worried.
So this spells trouble.
Okay.
I could have 3 of these and I would end up telling the darkest stories I learned while making tamales. Like,
Haunting and Visceral Extended Stay uses the language of body horror and the Gothic to comment on the complicated relationship between the Latinx undocumented experience and capitalism, the erasure of those living and working on the margins, the heavy toll exacted by memory, and the queasy permeability of boundaries that separate the waking world from the world of dreams.
So chapter 1, Mr. Juan Martinez. Dear God, did you just want to put blood on the pages? My God. I if you
I think we need to all talk about our feelings about chapter 1.
So I was just like, all right, so this is, and chapter 1 is always the world building. This is where you're gonna be, oh, okay, so this is where we're gonna go. I'm standing. So chapter 1, I was, again, same thing with Australia. I'm reading a book in public and I'm like, I need to not do this ever. Next time I get brought back, if I ever come back, I need to just read these in my room by myself and scream "what the fuck" really loud. But it really puts I felt Alvaro's sweat.
Yes.
In his, like, I could feel, like, my Apple Watch alerted me twice, like, your heart rate's going up. Like, no,
are you okay? Are you having an event?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I did not do the audiobook, because I'm like, I can't do that. I can't go on a rage walk because I'm just gonna start running and like kill myself in the process of running away from the book. Get away from me,
running away from the voices in my ear.
Yeah, exactly. Get them out of me. I'm gonna throw like my Apple, my AirPods into the like shadeless sheet because I walk around the perimeter of it. I really was just like, wow, but it's also a really amazing brother-sister story. And that is the main focus of the story. It's about sacrifice. It's about love. It's about what are you willing to do for free rent? And also it's the plight of the undocumented. They are the sacrifice, and they really are the backbone of the hotel industry in Las Vegas and in the kitchens as well.
Ronnie, I also want to like hear from you, like what were your initial feelings coming off of this read? Did you just, okay, because Bella, I had a text from her like just shy of 1 a.m. I'm like, should we just
have a text chain? Yeah, should we just have a text chain?
We should. So here's the thing. My husband read this, like, in fact, this is his book. It's why I think I recommended it, because we already had it in the house, and he read it last year. And so when he found out that we were going to read it for the podcast, he was like, oh, Vero, that is pretty brutal. So I don't know how you're going to take to it. So I procrastinated reading it. I didn't even start this book till like Sunday, and I finished it Wednesday because I just put off. And then like I read the first chapter and I was like, oh God, I don't know if I can do this. And so opposite of you, Bella, I switched to the audiobook because I was like, okay, well, at least I can, if it gets rough like that again, I can just speed up and just whiz through the traumatic parts. And so I procrastinated for the long time, and I wasn't in the headspace for something this heavy. As soon as I finished it, I went to the bookstore and I bought a middle grade book to read to just kind of lighten
for self-care. Yeah.
For self-care, yes.
This is why I read my like hard case crime little mystery like smut novels, like hard detective smut novels, because there's always a murder, there's always some sex, there's the mystery, and then a twist, and then bye-bye book, so
Yeah.
real quick 100 pages, sexy pulp novels, just that's what I break in between books like this.
Yeah,
like
it was a trip, man. I mean, it was kind of The Shining with eldritch horror going on, body horror, grief, and just the trauma that we carry no matter where we go. That's, we sit in it, we live with it. Like in that passage that you read, Bella, about how, Gadaman's not asking and he's not telling and they're not communicating. And like the social worker in me is like, but if they had ever like sat and talked about it, how might things have been different? Like, would they have both been chained up in their own separate cells of grief? And how might that have affected their interactions with the hotel down the road?
Ooh, yeah. True.
But yeah, I just thought it was, and as horrible as the first chapter was, there was almost, with the writing style, it wasn't clinical, but it was just very utilitarian the way it was. It wasn't like super emotive. There was a detachment, at least for me, which I think makes sense.
Wait, are we in chapter 1? We're talking chapter 1?
Yeah, still chapter 1. There was a detachment from the writing, and actually throughout the story, which makes sense because Alvaro's so traumatized.
Well, yeah, I feel
he has to keep that distance in order to not just completely lose it.
This is where we tie in David Lynch. Like, it makes me think a little bit about, in interviews and stuff, he's said some really interesting things before in the past about death and dying, and the concept that it's like, it's just a continuum. We shed our physical form, but there's a continuum, and we go on. And so it's sort of like this idea. And this is where I get so emotional. And I don't know how you guys felt reading the epilogue, but I got emotional reading it because it is essentially Alvaro talking from whatever, the great whatever, not of this earthly plane anymore, but like the part where he says to her, a box of keys sat by the abandoned valet station. No one would be coming for any of those cars. The young woman, you, imagine the cars in 100 years, the parking lot swallowed by sand, the cars still waiting for drivers, long gone, long forgotten. We'll be fine, you said. You will, but you don't know that yet. You're just hoping.
The part through the epilogue that got me was on the next page where he says, you'll forget.
Yes.
But I'll come back one night. I'll come back in a dream. I'll tell you everything. You'll dream that the voice you heard is just a voice and not your brother. You'll wonder if I'm lying. You'll count my fingers. You'll remember us. Mom, Dad, Alma, me. We carry each other.
And in our final book of today, our most recent read, right? Yeah, our most recent read was Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin. And we paired this with a mate-based cocktail called the Wake Up Call. It brings mezcal and mate together. Really delicious. I talk a little bit about that and also the traditional preparation of mate. And the story was, again, another really interesting, beautifully told story. Much shorter read than our previous ones. As I say in the episode, I read this one in a day. Veronica read it in a day. And we both came away with it with just a lot of questions and reflections. So enjoy this clip. If you've read Fever Dream, then you know that mate is mentioned a few times in the story. Not all of our book club beverages work so directly with the books. Sometimes if a particular spirit is mentioned in the book or like maybe a specific region, I do try to see if I can find something that pairs well and correlates with that. So I was able to find a drink that features mate. For those of you who just recently learned what mate is, I would like to give you a little bit of information on it. Ronnie, you've heard of mate before?
I don't even remember that it was mentioned in the book. No, I've never heard of it.
It comes up a couple times. It's mentioned more than once. I didn't know what it was until, honestly, that Meghan Markle or Meghan Sussex, I believe is what she goes by now, that show on Netflix. I watched that, and she has an episode where her like lifestyle show. She has a new lifestyle. It's real cute. I watched it. I'm a big fan of it. I don't remember what the name of it off the top of my head is. It's just like a lifestyle show, and there's cooking, and think Ina Garten, think what's her face? Martha Stewart. Why am I blanking on everything? But anyway, it's a cute show, and on every episode she has like some different. Sometimes it's a chef or some sort of expert in their field. Sometimes it's a famous friend, whatever. And so on this particular episode, she had some well-known friend she has who I want to say is from Argentina, but don't quote me on that. I don't know. But anyway, mate. A little bit about it. Also called yerba mate. It's a tea beverage, really known and popular in South American regions. It's brewed from dried leaves of an evergreen shrub or tree that's related to the holly. It does contain caffeine, but it's less astringent than most other teas. It's, like I said, it's common in a lot of South American regions, really common in Argentina. The author herself of this book, Fever Dream, Samantha Schweblin, is Argentinian as well. It has roots in Guarani indigenous peoples of South America, but according to Britannica.com, Veronica, it was a plant that's also been cultivated by Jesuit missionaries. And I mentioned that because we just had the passing of the Pope, who was a Jesuit. So R.I.P. Shout out to the Pope. Okay, the preparation of mate is special. And so if you watch the Megan Sussex show, you probably got to see some of that process. What you do is you fill a container with the leaves. I think this container is called a calabash. I keep wanting to say calabasa, but it's a gourd. And so you pour hot water over the leaves and you drink it through a metal straw that I think is called a bombilla. And that acts as a filter so that you're getting the tea and not the leaves, because it's just like loose leaves. It's not like tea bags. You can get mate in tea bags if you want to, but traditionally it's made this way. What is customary is that this is something that happens with friends or loved ones. This is a social beverage. It's a social experience. And so there's one person who prepares the tea, and it's also pretty common for that person to drink the first brew to ensure that the quality is good for guests. After that, they make subsequent brews for their guests. So it's a nice display of hospitality and caretaking. But by the way, I should tell you, if you haven't had mate, it's very earthy. And so I didn't find, and I'll explain more when I get into the cocktail, but I didn't find any mate tea. This is Guayaquil's yerba mate. It's like canned. And you can get, I think, the original flavor. This one is flavored. This one's Bravo Mango. So, and then like I have another one I think it says like something berry. So you can get different flavors. And so it does have this one is sweetened. You can get it unsweetened, but that one has a little bit of sweetness to it. What I found online is that the earthiness of the mate tea would work best with a smoky mezcal. So we're having mate meet mezcal. The name of the drink I went and found off of prooftv.bar is called the Wake Up Call, which is nice because when you're coming out of a fever dream, you need a wake up call. I would classify the Wake Up Call as more of a mixed drink, albeit it's an elevated mixed drink than a cocktail. And for those of you who don't know, the difference between the two being that a mixed drink is going to be your base spirit and then some kind of mixer like juice or soda. And your cocktail will have slightly more complex fusion of ingredients and flavors and so forth. The Wake Up Call is a mixed drink to me. And it starts with the Guayaquil yerba mate. I'm holding it up for people who get the video episode and for Veronica, but for our people on Patreon who get the video episode, you can see it. And they sell this in most grocery stores. I was able to find it no problem here. It's pre-brewed chilled mate. Comes in those yellow cans. The recipe off of this website, and we always link this stuff for you guys in show notes, it calls for 1.5 ounces of mezcal. The mezcal that I used is one that we've used before. It's the Del Magui Single Village Mezcal. It's the Chichicapa. They have different labels. So this one is the Chichicapa label, and this one you can pick up at Total Wine. So 1.5 ounces of mezcal, 1 ounce of the canned yerba mate. Then you're going to do 1/4 ounce of mate syrup. So what you would do is you would go and you would get mate tea bags, and then how you make your simple syrup, equal parts water, equal parts sugar. You simmer that on the stove, drop your tea bags in there so that you're doing essentially a tea infused simple syrup. So you're getting that extra flavor of mate in the drink. You would finish this off with 1/4 ounce of fresh lime juice, 1/2 ounce pineapple juice, and some chocolate bitters. I know that sounds weird, but that's what the recipe calls for. This is the kind that we typically always have on hand. We use Fee Brothers Aztec chocolate bitters. This is a book that was published in 2014, and then the English translation came out in 2017. So it's been out there for a while.
I can only speak, obviously, to my experience as an audiobook listener listening to this on audiobook. Because I couldn't find a physical copy. None of my libraries had it, and Barnes & Noble, none of my local bookstores had it. So I went with the audiobook route. It probably would have lent itself better to reading the book, the words myself, because I don't know. I was pretty confused. I mean, I was following along, but then the ending came, and I was like, wait, what? What happened? That's it?
That's it? Excuse me?
So, I mean, it was interesting.
Really interesting. Really cool concept. And it's the kind of thing where it's like, man, you could almost take this concept and turn it into a whole show. Kind of like, what's that show? Black Mirror? I don't know. Yeah, this was one of because of its shortness, this was one of those books that I started reading and then just boom, I finished it in like an afternoon of just the amount of time I spend sitting in cars waiting for kids to get out of places. I had plenty of time to just read, so I was just reading it all, and I finished it in an afternoon. The brevity of it obviously makes you want more, and you're just like, no, it can't end this way. So
after finishing it, I think I came across something that, because I went into this like I do with the movies. I didn't have any clue what this was about, other than it's in the horror genre somewhere on the spectrum, but I knew nothing about it. But after reading it, I did obviously come across some things that I guess if you have to put a label on it, would slot it under something like eco horror. And so then obviously that would have been the author's intention, is to point towards things that we do to the environment that are causing these sicknesses in the children of the village, or just people of the village in general, and specifically of David. But when I was listening to the audiobook and having no knowledge that that's where this was going, all her little subtle, I mean, obviously the horse is drinking from the water where there's a dead bird. Was it a bird?
Like a duck. Yeah, I think it was a duck.
That's something in the water. But I missed, I'll just be totally honest, I totally missed all the little hints about clues that might have pointed me towards, this is about environmental
Did
factors.
You think there?
I was really pretty much looking for like supernatural forces.
Well, because I feel like we're talking about something we read so long ago. But it was just like, do you remember the lady who does the ritual? I don't know, like in the greenhouse or whatever. I'll just call it the ritual because I don't know what else to call it. Yeah, I got the vibe that there must be something sort of supernatural going on, because when what's the lady's name? Carmen?
Which one?
Not Amanda, but the lady she's talking to, Carla. Because when Carla's relaying the story of what happened to David, and she describes David coming down the hallway after the ritual that this lady did, and David just seems not like himself at all at that point. I was just thinking, man, what the hell's going on in this little community?
Still very strange. I think I would have liked the Ritual Distance title better.
The rescue distance? Rescue distance.
What did I say?
Ritual distance.
Ritual distance.
The rescue distance. Yeah. And I thought that there was going to be more to that. I also thought there was going to be.
I'm sure if it had been like a full length novel,
yeah,
she could have delved more into all these little things that.
I also thought there was going to be more to the worms, because they keep mentioning the worms.
Yeah.
It feels like worms. And I was just like, what happens when the worms get inside you? But this is, again, one of those stories that I think talks about death and kind of crossing over in such a beautiful way. All right, my friends, that's going to wrap it up for us today. Thank you for taking a walk down memory lane with us as we revisited these wonderful books. If you haven't read them and you made it this far into the episode, please do give these books a read. Our current book club pick is Jawbone by Mónica Ojeda, and we have our next book club episode coming up at the end of July, so at the end of this next month. But before that, we'll be back to you in early July with a film episode. And if you follow us on social media, we're at Don't Watch at Night Pod everywhere, then you'll know our next movie pick when that gets announced. So we hope you're having a peaceful summer. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Don't Watch at Night is a Nest production hosted by me, Veronica, and Valerie. Editing by Valerie. Music by Omar Chakor. Production support for this episode provided by Lorenzo Villarreal and Alex Street. Listen to new episodes of Don't Watch at Night every other Monday, and don't forget to give us a rate and review. It's the best way to help us grow.